Well, hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I pray that you're all having a blessed week wherever you are. If you are new here, my name is Amaris, and this is That Refining Fire. I talked in my previous video about how God gave us a house and how there was provision in that for the struggles that we've been through with our daughter medically over the last few years. And there are a lot of testimonies that I have that are surrounding my daughter. And I will probably share on those for the next video or two. But right now, I want to talk about how God has provided for us financially through the things that we've gone through with our daughter, and also just as a whole in our life, and principles and understanding that we have about financial provision from the Lord. When my daughter was born about 4 years ago, she had a bump on the side of her face. She was born with some swelling in her eye, and they said that eventually it would go away. It was just the positioning in my stomach, that she was just holding fluid in that area, only the bump never went away. And so very early on, she was only a few weeks old, we started to look into this bump on the side of her face, trying to figure out what was actually going on. And very early in the process of looking into what this bump could be, we were assigned a financial advocate, and she was assigned a patient advocate. And this advocate gave us a number for this separate insurance. It's essentially like a grant type of financial aid, and there are all different levels of financial aid. Some that you have to pay for, some that covers a certain percentage, 20%, 40%. So we gave this phone number a call and we talked to a representative, and obviously we're going through this scary and uncertain time, because anytime there's anything wrong with one of your babies, it's scary and it's uncomfortable and painful. And I remember we had received a bill for something, and it wasn't substantial. It was like some sort of eye exam or something like that. And we had been given this representative, and we called this program to talk about this bill, thinking we would get set up on a payment plan or something like that. And this person, in the same conversation, gave us the information that we were going to receive this financial aid. But not only were we going to receive it, but we received the level of financial aid that was 100% coverage. And what that meant was that every medical bill that we would receive for our daughter would go through our insurance first, and then would go through the secondary insurance, and we essentially would not see a bill from any of the medical care that she was potentially going to get in the future. And we were absolutely floored, because these people we didn't even know what was going on with our daughter at this time. We didn't know if surgery was going to be necessary. We didn't know if she was going to need any medication. We didn't know anything. We didn't know what actually was happening with her at this point. And so there were no codes, there were no bills, there were no indicators that this could be a financially expensive issue, and yet we were given the highest level of financial aid possible. And so it absolutely amazed us, because even as we were going through this difficult time of what's wrong with our baby, and is she going to be okay, and what if it's bad, and how will we pay for these things? How will we pay for treatments? How will we pay for surgeries? How will we pay for for any of that stuff, because one doctor's appointment in, we had already received a bill for more than what we could afford to pay off right away. And it wasn't a crazy huge bill, but we also didn't have $600 just to pay off this medical bill right away. And so we knew early on that God had provided with this financial aid, except we did not know what was coming. And we had no idea how much God was going to be providing for us through this insurance until even a couple years later, to be honest. Because we never saw more than that first bill, we had no idea how much it actually costs to deal with intense medical issues, how much it costs just for an ambulance ride to the hospital. And there have been a couple situations that have occurred where we received a bill that hadn't gone through the insurance. We never had to pay those things, but we were able to see a dollar amount as to what God was actually saving us from. My daughter has spent 3 separate stays in the hospital since she was born. There was a 3-week stay when she was just a couple months old. Then there was a 4-month stay when she was about 6 months old. And then just over a year ago, she spent another 3 weeks in the hospital. And we received a bill for the 3 weeks she spent in the hospital a little over a year ago. And that bill for 3 weeks in the hospital, outside of the ambulance bill, was $400,000. And we realized quickly that if $400,000 is what it costs for her to stay in the hospital for 3 weeks, what did it cost for us to stay there for 4 months? And the 3 weeks before that. And we've just been praising God ever since. Not that we didn't thank Him before, knowing that He was providing even to some degree when we received that financial help, but the fact that they gave us 100% financial assistance before we ever had a diagnosis, before we ever had a stream of bills coming in, before she ever had a single stay in the hospital. We were expecting some help. We were expecting them to give us like some sort of payment plan, but we had no idea that they were going to give us 100% coverage right off the bat without ever seeing cause for needing that. But God knew that we would need it. God knew that we would be faced with long stays in the hospital, that we would be faced with medication costs. This last year, we switched insurance plans, not insurance companies, but insurance plans. And for the first time, we learned how much just the copay for the medication that our daughter's been on for the last 2 years costs. And when I found out that it was almost $2,400 for 1 month's supply of this medication, I wept. The fact that God has been financially protecting us in such a dramatic way for so long, without us even understanding the magnitude to which He was protecting us. God is just so faithful, and He's so good, and I'm so just in awe of Him, and I'm so just grateful. I'm so grateful for His help. I'm so thankful for His protection. I'm so thankful for His financial provision. And I know that that is a high horse to sit on. I know that is a big thing to say, that, wow, God has been protecting us from these medical bills. I know that there's good insurances out there that do help people. I know that insurance is a very difficult conversation to have. I struggled with how much we pay for our primary insurance. But until you realize how much things actually cost, I'm sorry, I touched my little microphone. I hope you can actually hear me. Until we realize how much things actually cost and you actually need that insurance, it's a difficult dollar amount to swallow until you actually need it. And then you realize just how grateful you are for it. And I know that there are people who don't have this same amount of financial provision, the same amount of help financially. And there are people that are out there and they're drowning in bills and they're drowning in debt because of medical situations that they're going through. But there's a principle that I believe is so important when we are seeking provision from the Lord financially, and that is to be faithful in your finances. And not just be faithful in your finances, but to tithe. Tithing is vital for believers, not just for the kingdom itself, but for your own protection. And tithing is essentially, if you don't know, if you've never tithed before, it's our instruction from the Lord to give back 10% of everything we gain, everything that we make, that we work for, and give it back to Him. And not just donate it, not just give it away to the poor, but to put it back into His storehouse, to put it back into His kingdom, and allow the church to disperse it the way that it's meant to be dispersed for His glory. And so tithing is a very intricate part of kingdom work and our faith and provision in general. And God promises that as we are faithful with the things that He gives us, and we are faithful to tithe back to Him, that He will provide for us. And that is a promise from Him. And not only is that a promise from Him, but it is the only promise of God that He says that we can test Him in this. God gives us the ability and the permission to test Him in something. And so if God means that a promise so much so that He says we are able to test Him in it, God means it. He means everything He says, obviously. But if He's allowing us to test Him, it is a promise that we can bank on. And so it's something that my husband and I started young in our marriage, that we wanted to tithe, and we wanted to tithe faithfully. And God has provided. There have been months where the numbers just do not make sense. How are we not, I always forget, is it the red or the black? Whatever one is bad. How are we not in the hole right now? How did we pay all of our bills and our mortgage and feed ourselves this month? How did we do that? And it's not because we did it ourselves, because the numbers did not make sense. But let me tell you, our mortgage was paid, our bills were paid, we ate all month. God provides financially. There would be people who would come out of the woodwork and buy us groceries. Our parents being huge catalysts that the Lord has used to help us financially. I don't know everything for certain, but I do know that God is faithful to provide for us. He is Jehovah Jireh, our provider. And when we are faithful, when we tithe, He is faithful to provide. And the testimony that I have of God providing for us so heavily by planting us in the house that we're in, to be close to the hospital that we needed to be close to, then providing for us in such a big way financially before we ever even truly stepped into the wormhole that these medical situations have led us through. He placed the provision beforehand, and He's been providing ever since. And I truly believe that if we were not being faithful in our tithing, that things would look a lot different. So that is my tithing testimony. That is the testimony that I have of God providing in a huge way for us financially. And I know that He will continue to provide for us financially. I know that He's called us to pay off debt that we have, and he has been so faithful to aid us in this endeavor of paying off debt. He's given us a heart to do it, a desire to do it, and he is making a way for us to be able to achieve that goal. The word of God says a borrower is slave to the lender, and I believe that he is moving many, if not all of his people to be moving towards this mindset of freedom from being a debtor to the lender, and moving his people into freedom financially and putting that on so many of our hearts. And so if God has been putting debt freedom on your heart, then let me tell you, the very first step that I would do before anything else is begin to tithe. Begin to tithe faithfully. It's painful in the beginning. It can be painful in the beginning. I know when my husband and I began tithing a full 10% for every single check, every single amount of money that came into our hands, it was painful because tithe was not the first priority always. Tithing was, if there's money left at the end, then we'll give our 10%, or we'll give what's left at the end, instead of letting our tithing be more important than our mortgage. The first money that goes out of our paychecks is tithe, and everything else comes second. And I will tell you again and again that we have not struggled financially. We have been blessed financially. God has been so faithful to return to us that investment back into his kingdom, to our obedience in giving him back the 10% that he asks of us. And so I so encourage you that if you have not taken it upon yourself to begin to tithe, I promise you, I feel comfortable saying this because God promises us, and he says to test him in this. If you are faithful to him with your finances and you tithe back to him, he will return it. And there is no one that can give more, can give a greater return on your investment than the Lord. Just trust him in it. We have learned to trust him in this area. And so I just so encourage you to trust him yourselves and watch what he does in your life and in your finances by trusting him in this area. I feel like that was a little heavy, and I feel like that was a little bit maybe all over the place. I won't really know until I watch this video back to edit it, but I pray that it was a blessing to you. I pray that whatever God is speaking to you through this, that he would give you peace about it, that he would give you direction about it, that he would lay it on your heart and give you the desire to be obedient in this area, or whatever area that God is talking to you about. And I will see you in the next one. But until then, bye.
When